Hey, welcome everybody. Um, we'll just keep admitting people as they arrive. One of the reasons we chose Zoom, guys, is that it handles multiple participants really, really well. So if you're comfortable with putting on your video, it'd be really nice to see your faces, especially when we come into the discussion part. So my name's Amanda Warren, if you haven't met me before. And hi, Sean, nice to see your face. Hi, Paul. And I've been working with the Last Planner system for, oh, well, gosh, over 30 years now. And this boot camp came around because over the Christmas period, we were talking about how hard it is in the industry at the moment. And what could we do to help support people who are trying to use the Last Planner system, can't necessarily afford a lot of training, but want to really polish up on the skills so that you get the best out of it. And so we've come up with this idea. It's a big experiment, so we don't quite know how it's going to work. And we're going to ask you for lots of feedback as we go through. So we've got a great session today. The plan is to run weekly. You don't have to come in weekly, but if you are a member of the bootcamp, then you can jump in and out as you like. You'll get all the recordings. There won't be an hour every week. The first of the month we'll have a guest speaker, and today we're really lucky to have Rob Harwood from Cook Brothers, who I'll introduce shortly. We will have the guest speaker for the first week with an hour, and then the subsequent weeks we'll have 40 minutes, and that will make up 20 minutes of a focus. So we're going to have each week a key focus on something that's important around the Last Planner system, a bit of a learning. And then we've got 20 minutes for your questions. And I'm going to encourage you to use the chat function down here. So on your bottom of your screen, if you click on the chat, if you've got questions coming up, just type them in there. And then Rob and Tim and Sue and I will always keep an eye on them. And then in the last 20 minutes, we'll pick them up and start running through them as much as we can. There'll be recordings each week and you'll get the recordings. And then the last week of the month, we'll just run a 20-minute session just purely to focus in on your questions. So that'll be our rhythm. And just wondering, is there anything else I need to say about the overall boot camp? So this one is a free trial, and we're actually thinking of making the next couple a free trial as well, just to see how it goes. So please feel free to register for those. Yeah, anything to add, Tim or Sue? No? Okay, good. So
So
in that,
excited about this.
oh, I've got more people to admit in the waiting room. Yeah, and look, there's some people out there who are using the Last Planner system really, really well, and Rob is one of them, and I'm really looking forward to hearing him talk about that. So I'm just going to welcome some more people into the um, session. I think they were sat in the waiting room. Hi, everyone. We've just done a very, very quick overview of what the boot camp's about. Hi, Zach. Welcome. Hi, Dan. Nice to see you. If you can pop your video on, we'd be really happy to see your faces. If it's a bit early for you, don't worry. I can see most of you are on site already or at work. Um, I'll talk a little bit again about the Last Planner boot camp rhythm, the weekly rhythm at the end. But I think for now, what I would like to do is introduce Rob. So Rob is a carpenter by background, so he has really good first-hand knowledge of why the last planner system is so important to our subcontractors and how to get the best out of them. But he's been a manager in construction for a number of years. So he's done 5 years with Multiplex, if you remember those guys, and 5 years with South Base, and then 5 years with Cook Brothers. So he has a whole team of people that have been really focusing on using the last planner system really well. And I love the way that Rob talks about how the system has helped him and his team. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Rob and we'll kick into it.
Hi guys. Yeah, so
Thanks for inviting me along, Amanda. So, yeah, I'm a carpenter essentially. So I kind of always come from that point of view that I've spent time on sites and dug holes, put nogs in, done installation. So I know what it's like being on site. So I'm always mindseted around what our trades need in order to be successful. I've been site manager, design manager, production manager, construction manager, regional manager, and now ops manager. So I've been not so much been there, done that. I've been through the pain and also had some of the successes from some good planning. The best lesson I had in construction was actually when I was, as far as understanding our trades, apart from swinging a hammer, was when I had 120 men as a construction manager for Kalmar. Kalmar have their own carpentry workforce, which was harbour construction, and I had 120 guys. I was working for Watson Hughes and Hawkins. I was working for Kalmar, and I got to experience all the poor planning in the world, all the most unreasonable expectations from main contractors, and basically experienced the poor planning from main contractors, which is us. And so from that, I become very aware about what's important to our trade partners and how, if you provide a good environment for them, how you can be so much more successful. So our role on site is to provide a profitable work environment for our trade partner. We often misunderstand that, and that's where we start to go wrong, when we start to misunderstand that we're actually there to provide the P&G, and that's actually what we're getting paid for. Our partners do the work, and we should be listening to them, and putting our trade partners at the forefront of planning is what Last Planner is, and this is the why of Last Planner. So I want to talk about three key topics. So first one's managing time, next one will be mindset, and then successful Last Planner implementation. I think Amanda put something out, said all our projects finish on time, and that's a pretty bold statement, because they don't all finish on time, but the key thing is the ones that we use Last Planner finish on time. And as we go through our project reports, I get to see what works, and actually I need to give some credit to Paul Morgan, who's also in the meeting, is that when Paul started at South Bus, he introduced Last Planner. I had been wanting to introduce it, but there wasn't a lot of appetite for it. But Paul came in and pushed really hard for that, because I'd worked with Last Planner at Fletcher's, and my sites that I used Last Planner at Fletcher's were successful, and that's where I first met Amanda. So as we started to roll Last Planner out, initially it was challenging to get our teams to buy in, but as our team started to use it, they started to understand that the control that they got from what came from actually letting go of control and letting our trades do it. So as we started to see the success, we started to then get all our sites running on Last Planner. And not all of our sites are currently running on Last Planner, but we probably have about a 75 to 80% implementation, and that is continuing to grow. So the key thing to managing your time on site is using your trade partners and understanding that you need to be the hub of the wheel, not the wheel itself, getting all your trade starting to feed into you and providing a structured environment where, as Amanda talks about how the pyramid, you've reversed it. So rather than the king on top and having everybody listen to you, flipping it around and getting your trade start to fill it, to feed into what is going on site and giving you the information. The key thing that I'm looking for out of our Last Planner is identifying our constraints. This is the really good stuff that we really need to be understanding. It's actually what's delaying your project. So when we have our projects and we're seeing our weekly reports that are coming out and our monthly reports, we can see what's going on with our profitability, and we can track our overall program. But understanding exactly where it's going wrong is actually the constraints. That's the stuff that's stopping the project from moving. And the key thing for any site manager that I encourage is to really start managing your constraints and tracking those, and taking the weekly wins that comes from getting those released. Then the other part to that is actually getting those constraints when they come to you, when your trades are coming to you and saying, I can't do this, I need this RFI answered, or someone hasn't cleared out in front of me, I can't move on. That's when you can start getting into advanced notifications. And those advanced notifications come from your trade saying, this isn't working. I need this constraint released. And then you can start talking to your client saying, this design isn't complete, it's holding us up. And then you can start linking that to your program. And also, well, equally, with if there's trades on site that aren't pulling their weight, then you can start giving them advance notifications saying, hey guys, you need to move along here. And getting comfortable with those courageous conversations that come out of those notifications, it's really, really important. So often in New Zealand, we're a business we're a company that, a country that focuses on relationship, and everything's like a handshake, and no one is prepared to have those courageous conversations where we actually deal with what's going on. And Last Planner brings that to the surface, because you're having conversations that see those constraints identified. Then you can do something about it. So often you just don't hear about it, and that's part of the concept with getting the trades feeding into the site managers and letting them know what's going on. And those forums are just so important. So, on to the next one. Through COVID and the challenges that people have had, we've had a lot of discussion around mindset and stress. It's not easy being a site manager. I've sweated bullets myself, and I see some of my team really struggle at times when they're feeling the pressure, because it's not easy being a site manager, because you're always in between, but you're between your company that you work for, you're between the trades, and you're between the client. And if you are able to implement a system that enables you to manage your position, which is what Last Planner does, you actually have a tool to manage that stress. And then you can end up and you can start to make a move where your management of site becomes less about the stress and becomes more about pressure to perform. And what I like to see is the difference in my team and how much better they feel about themselves and what's going on when they actually have control of their sites, because they let go of control and let the trades help. And so if you are feeling like you're always losing from those programs always falling away and you can't quite make it happen, implementing Last Planner is a tool to manage your position. And it actually, if you give away control to your trades and let them plan, then you actually gain more control. And I see it in my team as we've implemented it, and how much better they feel about what they're doing and how much more control they actually end up with, because they know what's going on. So last thing, to be successful in your delivery and management of Last Planner, what are the key things that get you over the line? Number one, you have Last Planner, your trade partners contracts. The easy thing, just note that the expectation is that the first thing that's really important is, if you're going to do a pool planning session, ideally doing that with your client, your consultants, everybody at the very start, get those 16-week pool planning sessions in. We can talk about, I'll talk a little bit about our New Zealand simulator project and how successful that was, but we made sure that we don't have situations where our site managers are saying, this trade won't turn up. They've said they haven't allowed for it because they don't have the time. We make sure that it's in the contract, so they're good for that. Next one, you have to ring it takes about 13 to 14 weeks for a discipline to become a standard way of doing things, or a habit. So you're going to have to spend some time chasing trade partners to turn up. So you need to ring 24 hours before, making sure that they're going to be there, because otherwise key trades won't be there and the conversations won't be as robust. And then ring on the day. If you're on a bigger site, assign someone in your team to make those calls. Provide food on the day and break bread with your team. There's something special about when you actually just enjoy some food, sausage roll with a bit of tomato sauce or whatever, just make sure there's food there, because it just gets everybody moving. Next thing, know your critical path. You got to know what is actually critical, and you should be, if you're a site manager, you should be discussing that with your project manager. What's critical is the key thing to understand. And then the day before your Last Planner meeting, you should be meeting with your internal team, putting your milestones up on your planning board, and agreeing what you need to achieve, so that all your trade partners planning fits in and around what's actually critical, that's born out of your contract program that you're managing, either with the client or internally. And then the most important thing is don't put up the post-its or the planning yourself. It's just absolutely vital that, yeah, that you sit back and you let the trade partner, you're going to end up challenging them in the process, challenging whether they can improve on what they're doing. But as soon as you pick that post-it up, or you take control of that last planner, then you lose all the good source. Everything falls away at that point, because once again, you flip the pyramid around. You're telling rather than listening. The trade partners, it's what I notice, and it's the same thing with QA. If you say to someone on site, is it done? And they say, yep, it's done. And you're like, cool, can you sign this? Or can you give me the QA at the point where they actually have to commit? That's when the conversation might be like, just give me a minute, I'll go and check. Same thing happens when someone makes that personal commitment in front of their peers. They make that commitment, then that's where they start to really buy into Last Planner, and they buy into their personal commitment to the team that they're working with on site to deliver. And yeah, and if you end up doing that, you're losing. Okay, so has anyone got any questions now? Go to one of our reports. What do you think, Amanda? Let's check this report out. Sorry, Amanda, I can't hear you. Sorry.
I think she's frozen there, Rob.
Okay, I'll keep going. Okay, guys. So how do we manage our Last Planner operationally within Cook Brothers at the moment? So we have our a report that is generated out of the sites on a weekly basis. And the key thing I want to talk about is this. So we're going to track our overall completion, or our promises kept on a weekly basis. And it's really interesting when I track the challenges that we might have on our sites. And this is our Air New Zealand. So we had a project we did for Air New Zealand. Some of my team assigned in on it. So this is what it looked like here. You can see this out at the airport. This is an extension to the Air New Zealand simulator building. It was only about $4 or $5 project inside a $55 million driven simulation to New Zealand's infrastructure and their training. We're on $15,000, $20,000 a week liquidated damages. So it was critical that for such a project, such a small value project, that we finished on time. I think we built it in months. We're in the next 5 and through the project. So if you look at here, these are, now, if you look at the promises kept, it's pretty high at 100. And with a pretty narrow group of trades in a small value project, we're able to achieve that. But we've had areas where we've fallen below. So the area here, that's a health and safety incident. This area here, where it fell down here, that's a design failure, where all of a sudden something went, we had to stop. This was actually an incident. So when we have health and safety incidents on site, we just go through a full reset. So I could look at what was going on and understand exactly why we were starting to lose time. And it's all around things going wrong. Now, if you're starting to see that things are going wrong and you don't actually know why, then you can be drilling into your constraints. But starting to track your projects and understanding exactly what's going on, being able to manage them is really, really important. So and here are some of those wet conditions outside of influence. So these are this is how we're managing our sites. What used to happen with Cook Brothers, we had these great Last Planner boards, but they weren't being used properly. They were just a situation for an opportunity for our site managers just to put post-its up to plan, but not to do Last Planner correctly. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of a story about what we're up to. And why I've really enjoyed how Last Planner has really affected our business. and really made us a more profitable, happier business, delivering for our clients, providing successful outcomes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rob. You really struck me when you told that story of all your projects using the Last Planner system are on time. And looking at that PPC graph, you can see why, because your team are really onto it in the details, and that's where the benefits come is when you can get the whole team looking at those details. So I'm just going to open the floor now. We've got time for questions for Rob. If you like to put your hand up or unmute yourself and ask a question, we'll have a little bit of a yarn. Does everyone know how to unmute? Yeah, Dan.
I was trying that. I seemed to turn my camera off, but it still looks pretty dark. But anyway, thanks to that, Rob. It was really interesting. Just a question around 100% achieved. I typically try and run far lower percentages to make sure we've got stretch targets. And the reason for that is to make sure that any administrative tasks never get in the way of construction. So yeah, I see yours with very low not achieved. Mine typically, as I say, are much higher. How do you hold the non-physical work tasks in Last Planner, and do you? And I guess, yeah, how do you track that to make sure that doesn't get in the way?
So I suppose a non-physical work task would be getting our safe work method statement signed off. So what we focus on there is, so we'd like to have those our critical tasks signed off in advance. So we encourage our site managers to put them up on 2 weeks in advance of a task. Ideally, if we're letting quite well, we would have identified that in our program, our trade partners program, and getting some of the detail around our QA and our health and safety and those administrative items entered into their contract, the trade partners contract program, and then filtered out. And then if the guys are tracking that, then they can start putting those up in advance. We've got a critical task coming up. I'm going to need this all signed off by here, and then have them actually up on the board. So when we're putting up our milestones, then we can start also putting up some of those tasks as well. So we don't end up trying to start on a day without an approved swim or a piece of QA, an inspection not undertaken by council or things like that. And just in responding to the percentages, we're we're focusing on 1,600 successful from that. But I suppose I don't drill into too much into the detail around, I think it's being tracked correctly. But if we're losing time and it's at 100%, obviously it's not being done well and it's not factual. But the sim building is a good example, is that we did our pool planning session for 16 weeks. We did 2 of them, had the whole design team, developed 4 weeks of contingency in our program, and then progressively that was eroded just through the natural program on site from design challenges, health and safety, changes on site, and then we ended up finishing 2 to 3 days early. So yeah, I think getting into the process of making sure you're doing it is more important than focusing right down into the as far as our journey. I think you're probably operating at a high level, and so our journey is implementation and getting it started, rather than we're not at that place of critiquing the quality of what we're doing yet. We're in the process of getting it running and utilising it as best we can to start with, and then getting to that level. Hope that helps you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good. I think we run jobs of all values with McConnell Dow, and yeah, and it's just making, I think those administrative tasks sometimes get lost on small projects or the shorter duration projects, and how we create enough space, especially that lovely 10 days possession of site at the beginning, that we're seeing a lot of our contracts. So how we get ahead of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So particularly the simulator project was a $4 million project, and we had 2 site managers on site, because if I start requiring my team to do Last Planner, to do other administrative tasks, it takes them away from being able to be out on site, making sure that things are running right. So the argument then becomes, if you're implementing Last Planner, how can you then have your team, how can you support your team? And sometimes you need to make the argument for more people on site to have a more timely completion and a safer completion.
Great question, Dan, and really good response, Rob. I think something I'd just like to throw in there is over the years I've realized that leading the Last Planner system is more of an art than a science. And yes, if you're getting consistent 100%, then you might, that might be an indicator that you can improve on the program because your team is getting that good now at trusting each other. And I think that's what Rob's saying is that they came in a few days early, which is fantastic. I think what I've found is that the smaller the team, the more likely you are to get to the 100%. It's pretty hard when you've got and Rob said he's only got a few subcontractors. When you've got a lot of subcontractors, that's really hard. But it is an art because you're always aiming to not have anything on your weekly plan that is so constrained that you know it's not going to happen. So it's a bit of a play with that PPC. Good. So anybody got any other questions? I think we've got time for two more, and then we'll move on to the key focus of the week. And I think, Rob, are you going to stick around for us to keep asking you questions after that session? Thanks.
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay. Anyone else want to ask a question? Okay, we've got one from Tim in the chat. It's a good one actually. Yeah, it's one of the sticking points that we find quite often in the weekly plan is a constraint that's somebody that's not in the room. So how do you engage with third-party players at the weekly production meeting? So that might be stakeholders such as the utilities. It might be client who's not in the room or designers who are not in the room. Is there a journey here?
So starting off as you mean to continue getting that 16 full position in place, getting everybody, clients love it. And what happens is clients are paying for their designers, their project managers who support the project, they're paying for them to be involved in the project. So as soon as you get in front of the client and say, let's have a planning session, let's get everybody around the table, the client's like, yes, that sounds great. And then if you have people who aren't committing, then the client's not getting their value. And so then if people are consistently not showing up and they're involved in the planning, then you can start making those requirements of your client. And then once again, it comes down to that advance notification. It's getting used to those courageous conversations. Dear client, here's an advance notification. We are unable to plan on site because your people are not participating. And our project is starting to lose time as a result. And if you produce your last planner report and it's sanitized sufficiently, that should go as an EOT. It's a supporting document for an extension of time claim. It's super easy. Here you go. Here's the actual information from on the ground from the project that demonstrates that that constraint X is slowing our project down and you own it. Can you please resolve this so that we can get our project moving again?
Yeah, great answer. And yeah, we've got one particular project that we're working with at the moment where Auckland Transport has been quite a hold up. And so exactly that, Rob, the evidence is there to go and have that conversation. And I loved what you talked about at the beginning, that the Last Planner system is all about having conversations. It's about giving evidence and getting the parties around the table to have those conversations. Okay, so unless there's any more questions, I'm going to kick into part 2 of our bootcamp this week, which is a key focus of an element of the Last Planner system. And because this is the first one, I thought we would kick off today with looking at are you using the real Last Planner system? And so I've created a bit of a checklist for you, which I will, as well as the recording of today, you'll also get a transcript and this checklist, which I'll send out to you, and you can have a go at using it on your own projects. So I boiled down what I call the essentials. So if you're not doing any one of these things, I have to say it's probably not the Last Planner system. Now, I said it's an art, not a science, and you can add and build and start slow and add things in, but some of these things here really do need to be done from the start. So the first one is pull planning. So if you've not run a pull plan session at the beginning of your last planner system, then you're going to struggle to get the buy-in of everybody because they won't feel like they collectively, and I'm talking about they are your subcontractors, your specialist suppliers, your designers, your clients. They need to feel like they've had an input into that program. So number one, their collaborative program is the first step of the last planner system. And briefly, we're going to go through over the weeks various aspects in depth, but briefly I've just put up here then the next 4 steps are the clearing constraints together, making tasks ready to be done by the operatives, and planning for production this week, managing that production, your daily buddy check, and then the most important thing is that continuous learning and improvement. So pull planning is something that you really want to kick off and do a launch with, and lots of food, as Rob said, breaking bread with people really helps. So this is a beautiful example from Ryman Healthcare. They have lovely boards. We've got the templates of these. If anyone wants them, just let me know. You can give them to your printer. And what we're looking at here is on the January, February, that's their milestone board that's come from their initial pull plan. And on the left-hand side, you've got their make ready 5-week look ahead. And they've broken down their building into zones, as you can see, or swim lanes, as we like to call them. And they're each week, the blank fifth week, milestones are pulled from the milestone board, and then the plan is pulled backwards to check the logic. But as Rob said, critically, the subcontractors and the designers, whoever owns the post-it note, moves their own post-it note. If you step in and move it for them, you've lost it. You're in charge, you're in control, but you're also responsible, and you may not have all the cards to be responsible for that post-it note. So, here's what it looks like. Lots of people having lots of conversations. Pull plans typically go through quite a chaotic stage, and that's a good stage. It's where we're having lots of talks. Here's our training pull plan. And you can see on the bottom left here is where the next one, where we're starting to have conversations to pull out constraints. And that's a real key essential, which is looking at constraints. And I'll talk about that in a sec. But the second one I've listed there, and just so you know how to use this health check as a health check, you've got your red, amber, green, your happy smiley face down to your sad face. You can, in your meeting, you can just tick which one you've got, and then at the end of this, I'll talk about using the plus delta column, which is your continuous learning. So if you're not having weekly production meetings with your subs, with your supply chain, with your clients, your designers in the room, then it's probably not the last planner system. You're talking to yourself. And so we have an agenda checklist here, which is designed as a poster. You can put that on the wall. And I won't go into the detail this week, but we'll pick that up in another week, where there are 3 rounds around the room for the ideal last planner system. Now you can run this in whichever way you like. This is one of the areas where you've got a lot of flexibility, but this is the way we like to do it. Look at last week, this week, and then, or last week, this week, and the next 5 weeks. This particular one has flipped the make ready plan and the this week plan, which again is an option. But having that meeting, whichever way you do it, is an essential with your subcontractors. I'm familiar with one project who are using the last planner system, but they basically have a meeting with themselves and then dole out a list of tasks to the subcontractors. And again, that's really push planning. It's traditional management, not last planner. So those constraints, and Rob spoke a lot about this. For me, one of the key elements of the last planner system is allowing you to clear the way for that work to be done. We know that everyone wants to be productive when they go to work, and if they have everything they need, then they should, we're actually quite good at delivering on site as long as we've got everything we need. And so it's our job. We are serving these people by clearing the way for them, making sure that they've got all the tools, the information, the materials, the manpower, the equipment safety plans, and the space to do it. And there is an advanced element of the Last Planner system, which is, you've got to be pretty onto it to get to this, but I love it when it works so well when you get there. And that is ticking off your tasks when they become can-do tasks. All the constraints are cleared, they're good to go. And that gives you real power to look at your post-it notes and say, well, can we bring this forward? Can we, if it's constraint free, if it's can do, we could do that early because look, the jib stopping's finished on time, or it's finished a bit early. We can go ahead and get quicker. So that's a real powerful thing to have. So that little acronym I think is very valuable as well to remind everyone constantly. And if you have big constraints on your post-it note, take it out of the week, put it in another week, and put the task that is clearing the constraint in for this week. So the weekly production plan, having something that is, and there are lots of different ways of doing this. There's a spreadsheet, there's the wallboards, there's now a digital option called Touch Plan. Having something that is shared, that is developed and owned by the subcontractors and the team, that is visible, that you're checking off each week. So this is the spreadsheet, which some of you might be using, and you can see there it's got a column for the constraints, and it tells everyone clearly what's going to happen and when, and it's checked daily as well, the buddy check each day. And then my favorite jump up and down is, are you scoring? If you're not scoring, it would be a little bit like watching All Blacks v England and not keeping score. So how would you know whether you're winning? But most of the importantly, what are all those lead indicators that tell you whether you're actually going to be coming in on time? And that's what the scores are giving you, is where, as Rob beautifully explained, is where are the sticking points? Where are the bottlenecks? Is it a quality issue? Is it design issue? Is it materials? Keeping those scores allows those conversations about how we can improve. And I think in New Zealand, we have a culture that is a little bit allergic to scoring because it feels a bit like pointing the finger. And we're going to talk in future weeks about culture. And it's really important to have a culture where scoring feels like something a bit like health and safety. We celebrate the zeros because that gives us an opportunity to do the next thing, which is, hey, let's have a stop. Let's have a stand down to optimize performance. Let's see how we can use that zero to really improve going forward and get better and better. So that getting that culture is an art, but it's critical. And then, so just a little quiz for yourselves. You can do this one in your head. If you don't know how the PPC scoring works, it's pretty simple. Anything that's 100% done is a 1. Anything else is a 0. So the overall score here, if you haven't worked it out yet, is 60%. And that's because only 6 out of the 10 tasks were done, ready to hand over to the next trade. And it's as simple as that. And then you can plot your scores. My favorite project ever, Waterview, came in on the approach trenches several months early. Unfortunately, if any of you were involved in that project, the tunnel team putting in the services decided not to use the Last Planner system and came in late and lost those gains, which is one of the lessons that if you're using the Last Planner system, it needs to be global across the project. But you can see the weekly PPC scores here. Once you get above that 69%, your program will start to shrink. Now, yeah, okay. So that brings me on to the final essential is, are your team doing some learning, and this is again really hard. I find the leadership, the person at the helm of the last planner system needs to have a lot of confidence to create a space for this part of the process, and because it's too easy to say, oh look, we just got to get out on site, we just got to get it done, but no, to actually stop, look back, and have a bit of a think about what didn't go so well, how can we improve that. And what we're looking at here is the use of a spreadsheet that was scored automatically at the on the right hand side here. And then as you go around the room, everyone is talking about those scores. And we're looking at, well, look, pluses here are what are the things that went really well that we want to capitalize on? We want to keep that for next time. What are the things, and you capture these on a whiteboard. What are the deltas? Delta is a Greek symbol for change. What are the things that need a bit of change, guys? This was a real one, beautiful Fulton Hogan example. Working for Watercare with pipes in the ground. The truck took too long to come back, so the gang who were digging the holes for the pipes were stood down while waiting for the truck to take the spoil away. So they had a bit of a yarn about that, and they said, well, what's the concern? They costed it. They worked out it was a few $1,000s of wasted time. And what was so that was the key concern. The cause was that one team can go faster than the other. One team can dig all the time, but that the truck has a fixed beat of the drum. So making them equal was the key here. So 2 trucks were cheaper than the stand down time for waiting for a truck. So it was an easy decision to bring in another truck. And so that's a great example of how a team on the ground can be empowered to go through the thinking process. And this tool just helps them step by step to make decisions on how to improve the job. Okay, so I'm going to talk about production planning options next time. That I think is the share for this week, which is what are you really running the last planner system as it's intended? And as I say, I'll send out that checklist, and you can have a think about your last planner system and see if there's areas there that you need to improve. And the idea of this boot camp is each week we will focus in on a key topic, and we'll do a bit of a deep dive and have a bit of a yarn between us. And so if you have got things that you are wanting to talk about in more depth with ourselves and other people, can you just type those in the chat and we'll put that list into the plan. Okay, so this is our last 15-20 minutes now, so we'll throw the floor open to your issues, your questions. So whatever you're experiencing, we're here to help, and we should be able to learn from each other as well as just myself, Tim, and Sue. So don't be shy. If you want to type your question into the chat, please do that, or just unmute and tell us about what you're working on. Thank you very much. I might pick on someone if if no one comes forward. Let's see. Ian Mackenzie, hi. I noticed you were here pretty early, so that's good. What are your key concerns at the moment around the use of the last planner system?
So getting participation from everyone. So a client will like Ministry of Education and school. So who's the client? I guess it's the school really, but if they don't play ball and actually come along and do the things that they said they would do, then we struggle to meet the targets. And at the moment, it's still designed, so we don't actually have the construction phase, but getting that participation. There's all sorts of things going on. Like construction's not the prime role of the school, the key people. That's the difficulty at the moment.
Yeah, that's do you know if the old phrase, if we had $1 for every time that question of participation came up, we'd be having a big pile of dollars right now. But it's a really, really good question. And so I'm going to throw it open to anyone in the audience to answer that. If you have tried something and it's been successful, let's help Ian out here with how do you get participation, whether it be the client, the designers, the subcontractors, how do you get people to the party? Okay,
I know for us, so we run 2 shifts at the airport. And our last planner started with mainly the managers from the teams coming in, and not the actual night managers that were doing a bulk of the work. And so what started happening in our first sort of wee while was that the managers were committing to things, and then the night guys were not able to achieve it, purely because they were going, oh yeah, that's 2 days, when they haven't actually seen the area that it works in. So we don't get the night guys every week, unfortunately, because they do need to sleep. But he makes an effort to come in every month to the bigger planning sessions that we have, and all the night guys come in. And yeah, I mean, I guess from how we got them to buy in is that we just said, well, you said you're going to do it, and you didn't do it, and then so now they were like, well, screw that, I'm coming in then to tell you what we can do. And since then, the fire company have been achieving 80 to 90% every week continually. We do have some constraints that we can't control, like if airplanes come in late, we lose 2-3 hours on a shift. And so that can sometimes be the constraint. It's just the operation environment. But yeah, definitely holding them to account to what they're committing to, and then when it's falling off, people that actually needed to be in the room started turning up, even though it was sort of not hindering their life, but a bit of a had to work around it to get to the site meetings. But yeah, that's sort of what happened for us. And since that happened about 6 months ago, and since then we've had some pretty good buy-in from the night guys around it.
Probably a good thing to talk about, Sean, is so Sean is at the airport replacing sprinklers in the ceiling spaces of the Auckland domestic terminal under and monitoring. And the challenge we've got is that talk about the challenge that we had with the electrical, Sean and the guys.
Yes, we had some issues where we were going in areas out in operation hours where live ceiling grid was being found because the grids weren't earthed, or someone had come through during the day and just left an open wire dangling onto the ceiling grid. So what happened is we got operations out to actually sort it out. Once it happened more than 2 times, we said what we need. When we started cutting through wire, rebaited and jib, we said to the client that as part of the final control that needs to happen, we need to have an electrician on site every time at the start of the shift to check over the area or that outside. So what ended up happening is they sent out someone from their maintenance department, turned up 2 days in a row and turned up for 3. But we sent an EOT on the second day being like, he didn't turn up. We've just had 30 guys go home because we couldn't access the ceiling grids, and turns out the ceiling grids were live. So that all came into the constraints. We lost 3 shifts because of that, 2 or 3 shifts because of that, and it all came back on the last planner. We lost time. All went on to EOTs for the client. It ended up, I can't remember if Rob came or was on one, have a big with the directors, health and safety directors at the airport from the EOT, because they had to raise it up the chain at that point. And yeah, from then we've got authorization to pay for an electrician every night under our contract. That, I mean, yeah, we pay for it and we charge them for it.
Mm-hmm.
How much control?
I think that's a really great example, Sean. And I think something I'd like to add to that is Rob talked about earlier, Ian, is getting food on the table as well. In the early days, at least, everyone likes to come for a bun or a sausage roll. And I think that something else Rob mentioned, which is giving people early warning about the meeting and then having someone phone them and just chase them down for the first few meetings. I think once people, as Sean said, once people start to come, they see the value and they keep coming then. And they see that if you sell this as a meeting where you can bring your own wish list and put your wish list on the table and be have somebody accountable for the things that you need doing, then that really helps people to step up as well. Cool. Okay. Are there any more key questions that you would like to discuss? Let's pick on someone else. Let's see. So, Calvin, are you there?
Yeah,
Hi. What would you like to ask this group of people who know the Last Planner really well? What are you struggling with?
we've 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 got I'm working out at Target Road in Totravale on the North Shore at the moment, and it's a design build. Designers run in conjunction with stakeholders, consultants, and there's been slight aspects of redesign. So we had our first Last Planner session with just the only one trade partner on site, the civil trade partners, and that went quite well. We had and do a full of the full stage one, which was 12 weeks. There have been some design changes which have affected consenting, inspections, and council, which has involved a lot of research. Maybe at some points 3 times a week of changing methodologies and planning. So they're kind of throwing a slight spanner in the works to a traditional Last Planner weekly production meetings. So we still have our weekly meetings, but within that time frame, we're still doing rescheduling and just to keep the building, the contracts going on site, the construction works going while we're still trying to establish a pathway through our program as well. So it's been quite challenging, tricky, but we're buying for contractors. But
Yeah.
it's a traditional Last Planner pathway, I guess.
Understood, Calvin. And look, it's not uncommon what you're talking about here, particularly in big civil jobs and early on in the piece. I'm going to ask Tim if you're there. Tim, do you want to pick up on this one? That's something that you've you've come across quite a lot.
I think that that kind of lack of ability to get everybody in the room and hold it together is key. As Rob alluded to, it's all about people and a bit of pre-planning and working around some of those constraints as well. Yep, go engagement, try and keep the willing people in the room and people that don't come so often or can't come. Yep, that's just a thought.
Yeah, and I mean, look, sometimes you do have to revert to push planning or you haven't got a program. Look, I'm a great fan of just getting everyone in the room, and if you rather than waiting for your programmer to come up with the umpteenth version of Primavera, and I do get it, some of these programs are really complex, but just get your everyone in the room, do a pull plan. And that can often restart. And if the programmer's in the room, then the programmer can give advice at that time and take it away and put it into a program and interrogate it. And I mean, we had a similar situation with.
Add another comment.
Sorry?
May I add another comment? You just
Yeah.
mentioned program in the day. And there's no clash between control and Last Planner, but you need to your programmer to get them on side so that they believe what you're doing helps them.
Yeah.
And also being planning kind of keep things going, but then you focus on a date when the program becomes real again and keep telling the team that we're just pushing for now, making the best we can. When the program locked in again with your program's control people, we're manage the communication with all teams. They understand change of circumstances. Last planner is still going. We're just adapting, and that the day will come, or the outline has been agreed. We're back to the program and back to pool planning again. Cool.
Just to comment, Ian, on new challenges with your with getting the design team involved. One of the things that will really help is when programs, if you start entering in key milestones for construction documentation release, various design drops into your program, and also things like release of your DWG model for any structural steel and things like that. So if you can front load how you prepare your program so that the design team on a critical path early, and then start talking to the client about how you get the design team in the room to understand what they need to be doing. That really does help. And also if you're delivering a design and build, then putting your consultants, having one of the requirements for your consultants is that they are responsible for attending pool plans and put that into their contract. Once you've got them on contract, those conversations get a lot easier.
Yeah, difficult is getting the client to
I think
ask questions.
The great thing is if you, and this is this courageous conversation so Sean was having. So just sometimes shy, and there's nothing like right off and saying, "Hey, project's in delay. Here's what the team's saying. Here's what's coming off my site or your site. Your project has stopped moving." And we sometimes shy away from those because we want to have this consistent relationship and handshake. But when you're late, no one's shaking hands. Everyone's getting LD provisions put against their contract. So much better to have those courageous conversations early and be upfront about that with your client. To say, hey, we need to have a bit of a conversation. Things aren't heading in the right direction, and you can help. And this is what I need. So sometimes I find that we're a bit scared of.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Rob. That's my takeaway phrase for this week is courageous, have the courageous conversations. Thank you. So I'm just going to move to wrap up as we come towards our 8 o'clock close. And as we know, as Last Planet official experts, we always finish exactly on time. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Going forward, we have a program I'll just share with you where next week we'll be focusing in on looking at a deep dive on scoring, why it works, how to do it. Then we've got beginning of April, we've got Callum McCorkadale from Fletcher who did a blinding job on Waterview talking about achieving culture. I won't talk about the rest of them, but we've got Paul Morgan coming up in May. It's going to be not to be missed, to be honest. Thanks, Paul, who's here today. Each week we'll be covering off those key focuses, and there'll be an opportunity to have a discussion. So we're going to run next week as another free trial. You'll get a link sent out to you to register. Please also, we will send you a link for some feedback. And our job now is to do plus delta, and we're going to continue to improve this and keep it going so that it's of value to you in the industry. We have got a pricing system for joining for the rest of the year. We're keeping that as low as we can, as we think. It's $120 per person for a month. And you can register for a month, and then we also have some obviously discounts for corporates, but come talk to us separately about that. But for now, we'll just keep running it as a freebie until we perfect it. And I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone that was here. We had a lot more people registered, so they'll all get the recording and the transcript, and there's some good notes I see in the chat that Sean and others have put in, and you'll get those as well. Okay, so look, thank you very much. Go well, achieve good things with your projects, and if you're interested in being a speaker, also please contact us. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Bye,
Amanda.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Cheers.
Sue and Tim, if you want to
Thank
stay online, we'll do
you.
our plus delta. And oh, Tim's actually, Sue, Tim, I remember he's had to go off to a meeting as well. Rob, that was fantastic. Thank you very much. Are you happy to share your notes?